If there's one thing I've learned living and working in the Mahoning Valley, we have a lot of history here. And while that's great for those of us attached to the history, not always such an easy job for those who preserve it, the folks at the Mahoning Valley Historical Society. That is until they found the Tyler History Center. Hi, I'm Tricia Perry for Vision of the Valley. Well, the thing I most find fascinating about this building is that for years I drove right by it and didn't notice it. But at the Historical Society, there was a vision for this. And why is that?
Well, it was a very quiet place on West Federal Street for 70 years or so. And that was the period when it was Ross Radio Company, which was really a wholesale business. So they didn't have retail space. They didn't really worry too much about the aesthetics of what was going on inside the building and outside. And of course, during that time, downtown Youngstown reached its peak and then began to drop off as well. But the real magic in the building, I think, goes back to when it was a confectionery that was designed and operated and really was the vision of Harry Burt, who was Youngstown's probably the most famous candy and ice cream maker. And he created his own vision of an ideal space for both manufacturing and public interaction with his products. And so that's the unique part of it.
But the building was already here before he came along. What was it right before he came along?
Well, according to our records, the building was built probably 1919, 1920. That's when it appears in the city directories of that time. And it was built just as an investment. And so built to have tenants, and the first tenants were a furniture company and an interior design firm. And they were here for a very short period of time because in September of 1921, Burt bought it and immediately went to work in creating his vision for the building.
Okay, so that didn't last too long because he didn't have a very long life, did he?
Yeah, it didn't last long for Burt. He opened the building on April 4th, 1922 with great fanfare. It was all over the daily paper, the Vindicator, and he ran the business himself until 1926. He had heart disease and he died in August of 1926, and then at that point his family took over. His wife took his shares, and then he had a son and daughter who were in the business as well. And they began gradually to phase out parts of the business between 1926 and then 1935 when they were completely out of business. And that's when the building sold to James Ross and Ross Radio Company.
Okay, so during that short amount of time when he had the vision of putting his candy company in here, he came up with a great idea. And what was that? And
that idea was to put an ice cream bar covered in chocolate or strawberry sprinkles on a wooden stick, so you didn't have to mess your hands up while you ate it or keep it in a foil wrapper like with the Klondikes that Isley's made. And he came up with that concept, he invented the process of making it, he patented it, and he gave it the name, which has national significance now, and that's called Good Humor. Okay, and then he went further because he knew how to market it, as far as the trucks and the guys that took the Good Humor bar around and all of that. Yes. Was he a marketing genius, or what was his? Well, he was a natural genius for marketing. He marketed himself that way, his products, but Good Humor, the main way that he distributed those out and got out to people was, didn't expect to come to the store, so he put everything in trucks with freezers on the back of them and had drivers in white uniforms who went out in the neighborhoods all over the Mahoning Valley and sold Good Humor bars out of the back of their trucks and rang a bell on the front of the truck so kids of all ages knew that the Good Humor man was coming, and then everybody just ran out in the street and he sold the ice cream that way.
And that lasted long beyond his own life.
Well, yeah, I mean, door-to-door sales lasted for Good Humor for about 50 years after his death.
So when looking at this building, the Historical Society saw the great location, you know, it has great, you know, view from the street, everybody sees it, it's part of the downtown. But then there was this other thing, that it was attached to this amazing product that made a difference to kids all across America.
Yeah, that, the attachment to the Good Humor story was very significant, and that's why the building's now on the National Register of Historic Places. And we definitely like that aspect of what we saw when we were looking at this building. But also what was really amazing to us is how well preserved the building was. Partially on the outside, but mainly on the inside. We're going to see parts of the building that haven't changed since 1922. And that's really interesting, and it made for a great plan that we had in renovating the building and adapting it to become the Tyler Mahoning Valley History Center.
And part of that was because of the business that came later. Ross Radio just didn't do much to the building.
Right, so you had Bert's vision and in the way he built it out in terms of factory space on the basement and third floor, and then you had great spaces on the first and second floor for the public to use. And Ross Radio, as a wholesale company, were not interested in remodeling. So they took some of Bert's out to make room for their business, but other things they just left the way they were. And that's the really neat story.
Even though I thought personally it looked horrible when we first got in here, but it really was just dirty.
It was dirty, it was black. I mean, you had soot on everything. You had the third floor ceilings, at least a third of it had fallen down onto the floor. But I mean, we saw the amount of work that needed to be done, but we also saw how much original was there and what great space it was, not only in Bert's time, but also what we're going to do here.
So besides the great educational value in the museum exhibits, there's a chance to have lovely events here, which you and I have both experienced already.
Yes, we have the original ballroom that Harry Byrd built in 1922. He called it the Rainbow Assembly Room. We call it the Thomas Ballroom. And that marvelous space, all original, restored floor. We have a new catering kitchen, and it's already been a very popular place for local events, and we're looking forward to getting out and getting a lot of people from all walks of life into that space.
And anyone can rent it for, you know, an event that's how many people, about 200?
Yeah, we can go up probably to a maximum of 200, and if it's a standing room event, maybe even more, like 250 to 300 people. And so it's great space. I mean, we had almost 300 people at a couple of our events, and it worked out fine. And like I said, nobody can really appreciate it until they come and stand in the room and look around and say, wow.
And now that we're standing in a space right now that's nice and big and open and used for different educational things, but it will really someday be filled with exhibits, right?
Yes, it's very dramatic when you come through the front doors now. And then we have this wonderful glass partition that separates the lobby area from the main exhibit gallery, and you have this wonderful view of the grand staircase behind me. People will not always have that view because this room that we're in now is going to be our primary exhibit hall once we open the History Center completely.
And another view everybody appreciates is also looking out those windows upstairs onto the street.
Yes, that ever since we had our first open house back in 2008, it's amazing and fun to watch reactions to people when they go on the second floor and look out the windows from the ballroom, or better yet, the third floor. It changes your perspective of downtown and the YSU campus in the near north side completely. And, and we love to be able to give that different perspective on our historic city here.
Okay, Tracy, so you're the education director here at the Mahoning Valley Historical Society, and you get to take advantage of this great space downtown for your programs. Tell us what goes on here with kids every now and then.
Yeah, well, every now and then we have public programmings, which are great, but for kids, we've done summer camps here, and without the exhibits, we've been able to use the entire space. So this summer, we've done our Civil War summer camp here and really transformed the space into a 19th century kind of, whole world with a battlefield and a home front and a war room and a Ford's Theater, anything we can do in the space.
And you've also had some pretty big lectures and speakers here, right? So
Yes.
how does the space lend itself to that?
I think it's been great. The ballroom, it looks beautiful anytime you're in there, but having it set up with almost 300 chairs for a lecture is just really amazing. And it's just a wonderful space. And we have smaller spaces up on the 3rd floor that we can do smaller events, classrooms up there as well.
How do the kids like it?
I think the kids love it, especially when we hit that good humor ice cream thing and they know that was down in the basement, and then every once in a while they're lucky enough to get a good humor ice cream bar themselves, and it's been a lot of fun.
You try to keep it stocked with good humor bars, don't you?
We do. I think pretty much 24 hours a day you could find a good humor bar in this place. So.
And now I know that it's not really open for kids to just come in and play right now, but it is something that if people wanted to see it and wanted to tour it,
Yeah.
Someone here could show them around if they needed to.
I would suggest giving us a call, giving us an email, something, so we know when someone wants to come in. But for the most part, yeah, there's people here. We'd love to show them around and see the possibilities.
What does it mean to have these kinds of programs for kids, these educational programs? How important are they to children who are 9, 10 years old to learn about these things?
I think it's really important. So much of what we do really connects them with the greater history of the Mahoning Valley. So it's always good to know where you come from, the importance of the place where you live. But I think the main importance is to have fun with history. And we never want history to be something boring, dusty old books. It's got to be something fun and interactive. And this space lends itself to that.
This is great. This is what amazes me, is that these amazing cabinets that can keep all of the history of the Mahoning Valley nice and tightly together and safe.
Yes.
This is a big factor in coming here, right?
Yes, this will not be open to the public, but it's probably some of the most important space we have regarding our collection and the long-term use and care of it. And we've created a facility here for our archives that we have dreamed of for at least 20 years. We have a similar vault, actually 2 vaults up on Wick Avenue in the carriage house behind the museum that we've been using since that opened 30 years ago in 1983. But this space is twice as large as those 2 vaults that we have on Wick Avenue, and we have 4 times as much shelf space. So we've really given ourselves room to grow, to put our whole archive collection in one location again, and to continue to work on it and make it available to the public once we open.
Because the artifacts and the memories keep coming in, and the records,
yes.
and they never stop, and you had no more space.
We were beyond, I mean, a lot of our archives collection has been stored off-site for a number of years, and archives are the single fastest growing part of our overall collection. So this was very important to us to make sure we had this facility in this building.
And of course, no one watching can tell, but it's a great temperature, so everything is safe, right?
Well, it's not a good summertime temperature. It's generally it's in the mid-60s temperature-wise, but also what's more important is the relative humidity. We want to keep it between 45 and 55% relative humidity, and that's how you get the right environment for long-term storage. Unfortunately, this floor had the most dramatic changes from what was here originally, and we had to do that to create the facilities we needed for the archives. We did save a little bit of Harry Bird's time and his ice cream factory, which was located here in the basement of the building. And but here in the archives, if we roll away these units, which is where we are going to store our collection, if you look back here, you see an odd surface on the wall there, and what that is is cork.
Can I touch it?
Yes. So cork is a very soft wood, often used for bulletin boards, but what's also key here about the cork is it's a good insulating material. And so when Harry Burt ran his ice cream factory down here, he had 5 freezer rooms along this wall. They were all insulated with cork, and after they mixed the ice cream and poured it into buckets or into the Good Humor bar molds, they put them in here for storage and hardening of the ice cream. And so this is one little piece left over from that ice cream factory that we left here for the sake of the building, but also it provides us with insulation today because that's an outer basement wall. It's good for keeping out the moisture and the cold.
This is one of the parts that hasn't changed much, right? The stairs?
No, actually, just clean and paint and refinish the wood. And what's changed the most is what goes on above here.
But what do you call this area right here?
This is the first floor mezzanine, and everything you see here except for the big marble table is original to the building. So this whole wall with the glass upper windows, which are backlit from the outside, that's part of the original design from Burt's. The flooring is original. This room over here, which we think was a coat room in his time, that we've converted into a bar, which would be part of the event space that people have when they use the ballroom. And really it's come down to where the function on this level hasn't changed much at all either. He had 2 restrooms and an office up here, and now we have a utility room and 2 restrooms. So the plan as it was done in 1922 works just fine for us.
Right. And as you said, when there's an event, which is in the ballroom, you know, up that way, I've been here where there's been food here and a bar here. So this is a space where people are as well.
Right. This is a nice gathering space for larger events, and you can operate a bar here. We have since added this wonderful marble table, which is another part of downtown Youngstown's history. And so it really adds something special to the whole event that you can have here.
Okay, well, let's keep going. Let's go upstairs. So, as I recall, these were all covered up, right, when the building was first purchased by the Mahoning Valley Historical Society?
When we first came in here, this glass ceiling you see here the windows were all black, and we had thought somebody had painted them at some point, but it was really just layers of soot that had fallen on them up on the 3rd floor, completely blocking out the light. Plus, we didn't have any skylights open when we bought the building either. So one of the more interesting and important parts of our restoration was to return all of the natural light that used to come in through the building from the front and back, but also from the roof. And this grand staircase, which goes from the 1st floor all the way up to the 3rd floor, is naturally lit, and it's just a tremendous important feature of the overall building, and it creates such wonderful lighting, which you can see here. The skylights are up on the 3rd floor from the roof, and then it hits this ceiling that separates the ballroom from the 3rd floor, and then goes all the way down through this well onto the 1st floor.
Which was how buildings were constructed because they didn't have so much interior lighting, right?
Exactly. You have buildings like this in a downtown. They're very long, rectangular, and really your only opportunity is the front and back because there's one building after another built alongside of each other. And then if you were clever enough, you could put skylights on the roof and add to that lighting.
So up here is where the candy making was going on.
Yes.
Was it cool enough for that up here? I mean, it's candy.
Well, you had to have good ventilation, yes. And you had heat to mix the chocolate and other flavors, and you had good lighting, but all these windows open too, so you could get a cross ventilation through the building.
And why all the windows? As far as people could look and watch the candy making? Or?
Exactly. That's a good point. You have this center hall right through the middle of the third floor, and visitors to Burt's were invited to come up and walk down the hall and look into the rooms where they're actually making the candy. So that was part of the Burt's experience. That was part of his marketing genius, was to let people actually see how efficient and sanitary his factory was. And the windows also serve a purpose in allowing light from the front and back to transmit all the way through the building.
Right.
And all these partitions that you see here with the glass, the doors, it's all 1922. All we did was clean, paint, add some more modern features and systems, and
it's amazing.
If you were here in 1922, you would still recognize it as part of Burt's factory.
And now it's used for classroom space.
And this is now our education center, which will be called the Ann Kilcawley Chrisman Education Center. We have 2 classrooms, a staff resource room, and then the large and wonderful exhibit gallery up in the front.
Wow, and this is nice too. This is an office area, right?
Yeah, this is swing space, but when we open, we will have partitions up here to create offices for some of our staff. And again, the windows in the back were bricked up, so you didn't have the views here that you have now. And it's another game changer as far as your perspective on the city. And we're on the western end of downtown. You can see the river, which is right here in the foreground, covered with trees right now. There's the Marshall Street Bridge. The old Southside Hospital, which is now the Mahoning County Administration Center.
The Vindicator.
There's the Vindicator building over there. And then next to the hospital on the other side of Oak Hill Avenue is historic Oak Hill Cemetery.
Bill, this is the end of our tour, of my tour, and I want to thank you for showing me around. Now, I'm very lucky to have you showing me around us. We're very lucky to have the Tyler Center, but if somebody else wants to see this, what can they do? How can they see it?
Well, we're not open for regular hours right now, but if you want more information or want to know when we're going to have an event down here, you can call us at 330-743-2589. Or visit our website. That's a good way to go too, www.mahoninghistory.org. There's lots of information on upcoming programs. There's more background on the Tyler History Center, how it develops, and photos. And so it's a good way to learn until we get open, and then we'll be happy on a daily basis to be bringing people in.
So the building has a lot of things. It has a great location, it has a lot of space, and it was well preserved, but it also has something else, a connection to a sweet treat that's part of America's culture, the Good Humor Bar that every kid wants to taste. For Vision of the Valley, I'm Tricia Perry. Thanks for being with us.